Hey everyone, I mentioned in another video that Cisco has really stepped up to help small businesses, medium-sized businesses, really businesses of all sorts, cope with this ongoing pandemic and with the ramifications of having to move our workforces from an office environment to their homes. So they've offered free, or I guess I should say, extended trials of various things from their portfolio. And that could be WebEx, but in the realm of security, they are offering extended trials of Umbrella and trials or emergency licenses for the AnyConnect VPN. And for this video, we're actually going to talk about Duo Security, which is another offering that they are kind of opening up to some extent and making available to us to hopefully move our users from the office to their homes while still maintaining some degree of security. So Duo is a two-factor authentication solution, but it's more than just Google Authenticator. It actually has a lot of integrations, things that you'd really want in an enterprise environment, like the ability to integrate with Active Directory, to pull down all your different Active Directory users, or pull it up, I guess, into Duo's web console, and then maybe make policies based on that. You know, which user should have two-factor authentication required when interacting with what application, for instance. So we can define policies like that. So you can get your free Duo license by going to, I think it's just duo.com or maybe duosecurity.com. And you can see I've got my trial license here. I do want to point out just a few things. So you can get insights, I guess, about the devices that are in use. Not much to see here currently. Policies can be made, and we won't go into depth here, but just notice there's a variety of different policies that we can configure when we're working with Duo. Things like user location policies, device health policies, browsers, plugins, and so on and so forth. So we can kind of enforce some policies without needing to rely on something like maybe group policy objects. We might not have a lot of our users using domain joined computers for the time being. So this is one way that we can still kind of maintain a semblance of security, or actually pretty good security if implemented correctly. So we've got policies, we've got different applications that we can integrate with as far as Duo goes. So if you go to protect an application, notice that it does integrate with a lot of different vendors' products. So 1Password, AWS, Adobe Document Cloud. What are some big ones here? Some more AWS, Aruba, Barracuda. You're getting the idea, right? Box, various Cisco appliances. That makes sense. Cisco WebEx, Citrix, and we're only down to the Ds. So there's a lot of different things that Duo will integrate with and allow you to implement two-factor authentication for. And we're actually going to demonstrate that. So one last thing I want to point out is that we can actually pull our users. We don't necessarily have to define users manually. You could, we could just add a user, give them a username, but you don't have to do it that way. And one of the important features of Duo is the ability to integrate it with Active Directory. So I've already kind of got this Active Directory directory set up, partially set up, and I'd like to show you how to actually integrate with Active Directory and then use that integration to implement two-factor authentication for RDP logons and also just local logons to Windows systems. So that was a bit of a mouthful of a sentence. Let's actually go ahead and do this. So to do a directory sync with Active Directory, you would go to Users, Directory Sync, Active Directory, and then you can add one by clicking on the Add button. And that's basically what I've done so far. So I've added this. The next thing you want to do is you want to get your various keys. So there's an integration key, a secret key, an API host name, and so you need that information to, you don't necessarily even need to copy and paste that because you can actually download that as a pre-configured file, which is what I've done. So if you just download the pre-configured file, it downloads this file called authproxy.cfg. This is what we're going to use to configure the connector between Active Directory and Duo Security. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm actually just going to install the Duo authentication proxy software or agent on the domain controller, but you could put it on its own server as well, its own virtual machine, if you want to segment and kind of separate out the services. One per VM would be ideal, but demo environment, we'll just put it on the actual domain controller. So how do we actually set this up? Well, what you want to do first is download. You want to download, if I just copy this link here, the auth proxy. So you can do that by going to this URL here, dl.duosecurity.com/duo auth proxy-latest.exe. And if you click that, it's going to start downloading, but we don't really need to do that because I downloaded this in the background. So let's go over to our remote desktop session here. Let me power this workstation back on, and we'll go into our domain controller. So I'm going to open Duo up here. Let me get this out of the way. I'm going to open Duo up, and we've got an installer here, and then we've got that config file. So those were really the two things that I just downloaded when I set up a new Active Directory integration. So we'll double click on Duo auth proxy. Sorry about my cat, if you can hear my cat. And it will just kind of go through and quickly install. And the next thing you have to do, or really the last thing you have to, not the last thing you have to do, but the next thing you have to do is you want to browse to, you want to copy your auth proxy.cfg, and you want to browse to C program files x86 duo security conf, and then we just paste this in here. And we'll overwrite the destination file. And now we've got our configuration set up. So if you're using just basic integrated authentication, you do not need any sort of service account. It will just work. And that's what we're going to be using for this. Now, if we open this up with Notepad, if you don't want to use integrated authentication, then you might need to make a service account that has visibility into Active Directory. And this is where you would specify the account name and the password. All right, so we've got this configured. The next step really is for us to start this up. So let's open up PowerShell. We just have to issue a net command. So I think it's net start duo auth proxy. Okay, it's starting, and it started successfully. So let me just make that a little bit bigger so you can see what the command is. 24 points. So net start duo auth proxy. So we've got this auth proxy agent running on the domain controller now. So next thing we have to do is go into our web console, and we need to configure a few more bits and pieces. So going back to flatten the curve, we're going to scroll down, and we have to specify the domain controller. So the host name in this case. And the host name of this domain controller is duodc. So we'll enter that. Port 389. And I pressed enter, but that may have not been necessary. And then we need to specify the Active Directory information. So what organizational unit, for instance, is the set of users that we want to enable this for in. So for our demonstration, we're going to type in OU is remote users, and then DN is duo, and then DN is lab. I believe that's the correct one. We could even jump back really quickly and verify that in Server Manager. So yeah, duo.lab, and if we go to Active Directory users and computers, yeah, remote users here. So that's the first thing we want to do. We want to just specify the organizational unit that we want to set this up for. So that is what we are going to use. It looks like I've typed it correctly. We're going to use integrated authentication. You can change the transport type between the directory server, the domain controller, and the proxy, but since it's on the same server, running the same operating system, I'm just going to use an unencrypted. And what else do we want to synchronize here? So you may want to synchronize the account name, for instance, the full name, the email address, and you will probably want to import phone numbers as well. So you can specify, if you go to your Active Directory users and computers, you can specify a phone number for users under the telephones tab. And I've already got that kind of pre-filled, but you would want to fill in the particular user's mobile phone number so that they can use the two-factor authentication with Duo. So fill that in under telephones, mobile phone, and we want to pull that in to Duo Security. So we select the checkbox here, and then we should be good. We're going to save the directory. An error occurred while searching the directory. Duo.lab, DN. Let's see, DN, DC. That'll do it. I think it's DC. Is that the issue? Yes. All right, so we've saved the directory. It's supposed to be DC equals lab, Duo DC equals lab. I'm really not that great with like these LDAP type things, but we've basically we can successfully communicate now with the directory server, that Active Directory domain controller. And we now want to bring in a particular group of users. So let me show you really quickly. Over here in Active Directory again, we've got remote users. That's the OU that we specified, but we also need to specify the group of users within that we want to pull in. So I've basically made Duo users under remote users because maybe not all your remote users are using Duo. And if we open this up, sorry about my cat. So if we open this up, we have these various members. These are actually my cats, right? So Aurora, Hulk, Lily's the one that you may hear meowing right now. And they're all in this Duo users group that's within the remote users organizational unit. So going back, we are going to pull in Duo users. And let's save it. And then let's synchronize it. Great. So we've synchronized now 3 users, 1 group. And if we go to groups, for instance, notice that we now have that Duo users group imported. And if we go to users, we have our 3 users. So that's great. What's the next step here? So the next thing I want to do is actually, I want to set up their particular device. So for your users, what you're probably going to want to do is you're probably going to want to send an email so they can set this up themselves, but we're just going to do this kind of manually here. And we've got this kind of set up already. I guess we'll have to blur out my phone number, but we've got the phone number already configured. So the next step is to actually demonstrate what we can do with Duo. And let's do that. So we'll go to applications, and notice I've got Microsoft RDP here as an application. I got that by just going to protect an application, scrolling all the way down to the M's and selecting Microsoft RDP. So we'll click that. And here in Microsoft RDP, you can see our API hostname, our integration key, a secret key, and all that jazz. And the other thing that we need, in addition to this information, is we need the actual executable file, the installer. So the link for that is similar to the previous link we looked at. It is at dl.duosecurity.com/duo-win-login-latest. So what this will do is it will, if we actually downloaded it and installed it, it will add two-factor authentication to Windows logins. So once again, going back to our remote desktop session, let's go to Duo Workstation here. So say this is a particular device that we want to enable two-factor authentication and logons for. We will log in as, let's see, Duo administrator. And hopefully I got the credentials right there. And after logging in as the administrator, we'll actually go through and install everything. So I've actually made a folder here. Whoops. Oh boy. I've made a folder here I downloaded the installer that we just looked at and the credentials as well. So let me just kind of open the installer, and it will kind of, it's a very quick installation. So we'll click next. We have to specify the API host name. And let me just quickly switch screens here. I'm going to go to, we'll go here. There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to switch screens because my API credentials are here. I don't want to give too much editing work to someone else. So what I'm doing here is I'm just pasting in that API host name, the integration key, and the secret key that were kind of already pointed out over on the web console. Okay. All right, so I pasted in those 3 bits of information. Oh, whatever, it's fine. The API key, I'm just gonna delete this in a few minutes anyway, so it's not a big deal. But I pasted that information in, I forgot to minimize it. And here we can kind of specify certain options. I'll just leave the defaults here, but you may want to read through those. Click next. We can enable smart card support, but we're not going to do that for this. So click next and install. And finish. Cool. So we've basically gone through this simple installer. We pulled down this information here for this application, the integration key, the secret key, the API endpoint, and now it's up and running. So pretty straightforward. Let's actually test it out. So once again, here we are in our domain joined computer with this login 2-factor authentication now enabled. So I'm going to sign out of administrator, and let me just show you really quickly. I'm expecting this not to work. If I attempt to sign back in as administrator, let's see what it says. Yeah, so notice that, and this may be kind of hard to see, but notice that it says the username you have entered is not enrolled with Duo Security. That's because the domain administrator is not in that organizational unit and that group that we specified when we set up the Active Directory integration. So let's sign in as one of my cats. So I'll do a black, Aurora Black, and we'll give her password here, which, whoops. All right, so we've signed in with the password, but now we have to sign in with our phone. So we can have Duo Security text codes if we want, and it sent the code to me. So let's see. Come on. Okay, great. So it sent this code to me. It's 1738851. And we'll log in. And there we go. All right, so we've actually managed to implement 2-factor authentication for Windows logins. And that could be a local login or it could be RDP. So that's pretty cool. So instead of using SMS, we can actually use the app on a smartphone. So what I'm going to do is activate Duo Mobile, generate an activation code, and I'm going to send the instructions via SMS. So now it's been sent to my phone, and let me quickly switch myself back on screen here. What I'm doing is I'm just going to click on the link that they've sent. I'm going to open it up, and now it's set up. You may barely be able to see this, but we basically set up 2-factor authentication here on my phone. So with that set up, what we can do now is going back to the system that we're protecting with 2-factor authentication. Let's sign out, and we'll sign back in to maybe the same user. Let's see if this works. All right, so what happened now is the application, the app on my phone popped up a little alert, and it's waiting. You can't see it because of the green screen, but it's waiting for me to basically click the green button to allow this. So once I click it, notice what happens on screen. It just kind of finishes the login process. So very cool integration with Active Directory, with all kinds of different applications, with Windows, with various remote access services. really a cool technology, something that I haven't had much chance to play around with until Cisco opened this up. And I'm glad I did, because I'm really a big fan of Duo, and very, very low friction in terms of once you've gotten this set up and you're integrated with Active Directory and you've got your users and their two-factor authentication devices set up, it's very easy for them to basically just go to their phone and click the green button when they want to log in after they've entered their username and password correctly. So pretty cool. I think so anyway, and I hope that's something that is an option for you, or that you maybe consider as you're trying to secure your mobile workforce. It could be particularly useful for, system administrators, network administrators, and other people that really need to make sure that their accounts are locked down and secure. So that's it. That's all I have for you here. Just remember that it's not just about Windows logins. There's so many applications that we can use with this. And just to kind of once again, scroll down the list, there's tons of applications that work with Duo. So pretty much if you are using a widely used service of some sort or application of some sort in your organization, chances are it's probably going to be supported by Duo. It's great for even software as a service, things like Office 365 or Google Apps. You can integrate those with Duo, and the list kind of goes on from there. Here's Salesforce, plenty of Microsoft integrations, WordPress, Mac OS. It's really cool. So I hope that gives you at least something. So just to recap here, we first installed the authentication proxy on the domain controller, which may or may not be best practice. You could kind of split that off onto its own server so that they're segregated to some extent, but for a demo, we just installed it on the domain controller. We linked it up to our web console here for Duo security. If I go all the way back up and we go to users and directory sync, notice that we've got this directory synchronization set up and it's working. And after setting up our directory sync, we actually used Duo to implement two-factor authentication. We used both SMS-based two-factor authentication for Windows login, as well as application-based two-factor authentication, where instead of getting a code and having to enter it, you just press on the green button. I think that's probably the one that most people would prefer. So it's not that difficult to get up and running. It gives you a lot more security, and I really like it, and I hope you do too. So thank you.